We are living through an attention crisis, and the people designing the technologies that drive it know exactly what they're doing. The smartphone in your pocket was designed by teams of behavioral scientists to maximize what they call engagement, which is a pleasant word for the systematic exploitation of every psychological vulnerability in your attentional system. Every notification, every infinite scroll, every algorithmically optimized piece of content is specifically engineered to capture your attention and hold it. Against this industrial-scale machinery, individual willpower is barely adequate defense. William James would have seen all of this coming. Not the specific technologies, of course. He died in 1910, well before the radio. But the underlying vulnerability he identified with perfect clarity in 1890. In his analysis of attention in the Principles of Psychology, he described precisely how the attentional system can be captured by novelty and stimulation, why voluntary attention is inherently limited, and why the person who cannot control their own attention has effectively ceded control of their own mind. He thought this was the central challenge of psychological life. He was right. Let us get clear on what James meant by attention. He defined it as the taking possession by the mind, in clear and vivid form, of one out of what seem like several simultaneously possible objects or trains of thought. Attention is selection. It is always the act of choosing one thing to bring into focus while others recede into the background. This selection is never passive. It always involves the suppression of competing inputs, the active, effortful exclusion of everything that is not the chosen focus. James distinguished between two fundamentally different modes of attention. Involuntary attention is captured automatically by stimuli that are inherently interesting, novel, loud, moving, threatening, socially relevant, or emotionally charged. This is attention that happens to us. We do not choose to notice the sudden movement in our peripheral vision. We do not choose to attend to the raised voice across the room. These stimuli simply seize our focus. And they do so because this kind of automatic capturing of attention was enormously adaptive in our evolutionary past. The hunter who did not automatically attend to sudden movement in the brush did not survive long enough to become our ancestor. Voluntary attention is entirely different. It is the effortful act of directing and sustaining focus on something that is not inherently stimulating, something we have chosen to attend to for reasons of our own, regardless of whether it automatically captures our interest. The student studying a difficult text. The programmer debugging complex code. The writer crafting a difficult sentence. These are all exercises in voluntary attention, and they all feel effortful because they are. We are constantly fighting the pull toward whatever is more inherently stimulating. James observed that voluntary attention, unassisted, cannot sustain itself on any object for more than a few seconds. The mind always finds ways to drift, to the more interesting, the more urgent, the more emotionally salient. What looks like sustained voluntary attention is actually a rapid alternation between brief moments of focus and barely noticed micro-distractions, accompanied by repeated effortful returns to the intended object. Focus is not a state. It is a practice, a constant, repeated returning. This is the mechanism that mindfulness meditation trains. Every time you notice your attention has wandered and gently return it to your intended object, you are exercising exactly the faculty James described. And like any faculty, it becomes stronger with exercise and weaker with disuse. The person who spends hours each day in fragmented, screen-switching, notification-responding semi-attention is training their attentional system toward fragmentation. The person who practices sustained focus, on reading, on writing, on conversation, on any single demanding task, is training it toward depth. James also identified the crucial role of interest in sustaining attention. Pure voluntary attention, he observed, cannot sustain itself without support from interest. The most focused people are not those with the most willpower. They are those who have found genuine interest in the objects they attend to. The great scientists, artists, and scholars who achieve extraordinary depth of focus are not forcing themselves to pay attention through sheer discipline. They are attending to things they find genuinely, often passionately, interesting. The interest does the work that willpower alone cannot. This has a crucial practical implication. One of the most powerful attention training strategies is not developing more willpower, but cultivating deeper interest. The person who reads widely, who allows themselves to become genuinely fascinated by diverse subjects, who follows curiosity without immediately demanding that it be practical, this person is developing the interest substrate that sustains deep attention in any domain. The concrete practices James would recommend today are clear. Eliminate environmental distractions during periods designated for deep work. Build the habit of sustained single-tasking. starting with whatever duration you can currently manage and gradually extending it. Practice some form of formal attention training, meditation, contemplative reading, or any activity that requires sustained focus without external stimulation. And above all, cultivate genuine interest in things that matter. Let yourself care deeply about your work, your relationships, your learning. The caring is not separate from the focus. It is what makes the focus possible. In an attention economy, the capacity for sustained voluntary attention is not just a productivity tool. It is a form of freedom. James knew this. Subscribe to The Psychology of William James and take back your mind.